Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sincerely Self podcast. I'm very excited because today we are joined by a guest who's really going to be able to help us get to the root of what mindset work is, a topic that I touch on in almost every single episode. So, we're joined by a professional mental health coach. He's also a leadership coach and CEO of Elite Mindset. We are joined by Gary Chupik. Gary, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm just thrilled to be on. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, I'm so excited for you to just share your insight with us. So, before we dive in, give us a little bit of your journey into the mindset space and kind of what led you here.
Yeah, oftentimes in life we don't get to choose our classrooms, and it's like taking
Hmm.
like a degree in college, and you have to take all these classes, so you have an idea of what the degree is, but you're assigned the classes. And so I feel like for me, in a lot of ways, experiences that I've had in my life were assigned to me in many ways,
Hmm.
but it made me be the person that I am today. So I certainly don't resent them at all. In fact, I think it's great to leverage those things. And so I grew up as sort of a reluctant leader most of my life, but I ended up getting married to a girl here from Seattle, and then was actually a minister, ordained minister for 28 years, and I learned a lot of my leadership chops from that. And it's kind of interesting because I don't know if I ever really desired or wanted to do that with my life, but it
Hmm.
was the classroom that I found myself in, and then I had a burnout in 2017 and kind of tried to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I felt like I had a lot of permission to ask myself, well, Gary, what do you want? And so I did that, and through some various conversations and what I would call divine appointments, just met the right people at the right time. I had an opportunity to meet Trevor Moawad, who was Russell Wilson's mental performance coach at the time, and just
Hmm.
formed a relationship. He was a mentor to me. And 30 days later, we had met on a Zoom call, and 30 days later, he said to me, "Hey, would you like to meet next month?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, would I? That would be incredible." And he said, "When you come, what I want you to do is I want you to put on paper what would you write down, and if you were going to take a professional athlete or a team through your process, what would that look like?" And by that time, I had put in about $1,000 of study into mental performance because I was looking for a way to and heal myself is maybe a bit of a bold claim, but just to be able to find a different language because I counseled so many people, so many couples. I just was so
Yeah.
familiar with the language that I think I needed a new like computer language in some ways.
Hmm.
And I needed a new operating system, and Sports Psych really gave that to me. And then I submitted that to Trevor, and Trevor liked it so much he hired me on the spot. So that's how that's kind of what my journey was into this field. And then I worked for the company for a couple of years, and then I went out on my own since 2020. So here I am, just experiencing this wild ride, and kind of in some ways just surrendering to myself and to the way
Yeah.
I was created and my identity. And surrender is a good word for it because I think I might choose some other things for my life. But when you surrender to your identity and you align yourself with your identity, and then the world can open up for you.
Yeah. And I love how a big theme throughout your story was you found yourself in this classroom because I've seen you mention multiple times that it's a quote that you have that uh, viewing the world as your teacher and that you're constantly a student and you're constantly learning. And so I love that you were using the term of it being a classroom because that's so true. I think the best mindset we can have or the view that we can have is that wherever we're at, even if it's not ideal or what we necessarily want in the situation, we have the mindset that it's something that we need to do for some reason.
hmm Yeah, and it will profit us if we have the right outlook. So, for
Yeah.
example, I do believe in positivity, but more than positivity, I believe in optimism. And the
Mhm.
reason why is because I think positivity in large part is a feeling, especially at the elite levels of athletics or perhaps even in business. But
Mhm.
optimism is a way of looking at life. And so for me, optimism always requires a reason for you to be optimistic. Well, positivity doesn't always require a reason, but I believe optimism does. So optimism is kind of like a lens to look at life through. And so
Mhm.
you look at life optimistically, even if you're in some classrooms or you have some challenges in your life, and even in the process of reframing failure, if you have that optimism outlook, then it can be really beneficial for you.
Oh yeah, I feel like that's the biggest game changer because I think a lot of the time when people are viewing like the self-development space or just starting to get into it, they think, oh, these people who are far into it never had anything bad happen to them or they've never been through anything hard. And it's like, no, most of the time those people have been through more than you could even imagine, but it's just that they view it with an optimism mindset and they just know, obviously it's not something that was ideal for me at the time, but look at what in what ways I benefited and look in what ways I learned.
Yeah, exactly. Like, for example, if you're an athlete and let's say you're a pitcher and you throw the best pitch in the world, well, it can still get hit for a home run and you lose the game. So it's not
Mhm.
necessarily about controlling the outcomes, but it is about putting yourself in the best position to succeed. So no matter what
Mhm.
it is in your life, you can say to yourself, well, did I put myself in the best position to succeed? And if you think about it, let's say for an athlete, was your nutrition on point? Because that would put you in the best position to win. Uh,
Yeah.
what about your sleep? Did you optimize your sleep? Because that would put you in the best position to succeed. How about your practicing? Did that put you in the best position to succeed? And I think it's a lot like that in real life, where
Mhm.
we might not be able to control the outcome we want, but we can always put ourselves in the best position to succeed.
Yeah, just taking control of the inputs, what we do have control over, and not stressing so much about the outcomes and the what ifs because we don't have the control over that.
Very much so. Yeah, and so that's why I think that it sort of is connected to optimism because optimism always requires that reason to be optimistic. So go work on the reasons. Go put yourself in the best position to succeed. Like give yourself the reason to be optimistic. For example, like I put in the work, I'm doing the right things, I'm studying, I'm working hard, I'm doing those things, doing all the right things, the reward will come. But you just do need to sort of dial into the reasons and forget about the outcome because sometimes if we're so outcome focused, it doesn't happen fast enough for us. And too often, I think we think in terms of, seconds, minutes, days, months. But even for a black belt in jiu-jitsu, the average time it takes to get a black belt is 10.5 years.
Oh, wow.
And the fastest person ever to do it in history was BJ Penn, and he did it in 3.5 years. So I think when we talk about perfecting our craft or being really good at something, it's a yearly measurement. It's not a seconds, days, weeks, months.
Yeah, just being able to have the patience for it.
hmm Yeah, and just know that you're going to have to go through a lot of things. And part of the reason is because in order for us to be successful, we have to be consistent at something. And it's the
Hmm.
consistency that helps us be successful. In other words, you can't just go and say, well, I'm going to be a astronaut, let's say. And
Hmm.
it just doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of things that have to fall into place before you do that. And there's a lot of training that you have to receive. And that's why I call a lot of what I do identity-based performance, because if it's part of your identity, you're more likely to be consistent with it. If let's say you're a night owl, but someone, let's say a mental performance coach or an athletic coach says, no, you need to do all your work at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. because that's when all the hustlers get up in the morning but you're not going to do that very long because that's not how you're wired. So to tap into, and that's why I say surrender, like you surrender to your identity. That
Hmm.
the reason why it's so important is because that's the thing that will help you be the most consistent.
Yeah. What would you say for someone who's starting to want to understand how to surrender and how to be more go with the flow? What are some tips for someone who's just starting that out?
Well, there's no question that you have to know who you are. So if
Hmm.
you if you're going to kind of figure you out, you have to spend some time really studying you. And so doing personality assessments, asking people for feedback about what they see in you, those kinds of things are really, really valuable. The next thing I would say is you got to know what you want. And if you don't really know what you want, you'll always be hesitant, or you'll always give about 70% effort because you don't really know what you want. So you're going
Hmm.
to keep back that 30%. But in order for you to be as successful as you want to be, it does take the 100%. So you have to know what you want. And if you don't know what you want, you'll be hesitant. And that
Hmm.
hesitancy will spill over into other areas of your life, and you'll lack the confidence necessary in order to be successful. So you have to know who you are, you have to know what you want. The third thing is you have to know why you want it. And Simon Sinek wrote the book, Know Your Why or Start with Why.
Mhm.
And I think that's true. You kind of got to know why. But Pete Carroll, coach of the Seattle Seahawks, said, but you also got to know your who. So it might start with
Mhm.
why, but it ends with, so who do you want to do this for? Because that's the emotional connection that we have. Do you want to do it for a spouse, a loved one, a mother, a father, your kids, whoever it is? You sort of have to be able to pick your who. And then finally, and I hate to say it this way, but you gotta kind of figure out how badly you want something. So
Yeah.
yeah, you might want something, but are you willing to put in the work for it? And so I think when you put all those four things together, you can kind of shift your mindset, like you mentioned, and
Mhm.
it's a good place to start on the surface there.
Yes, I love that. I feel like those are amazing pointers in how to figure it out because it's so true. The first thing that you have to start with is yourself. If
Mhm.
you don't really know who you are to a core level and like your values and the things that make you happy and the things that you don't feel like you align with, you're not really going to be able to surrender and feel into what feels right because you won't know. So I love that one of the main things you had mentioned was kind of figuring out who you are.
And there's a certain level of trust, right? Like if I
Hmm.
do something that is, let's say, a reflection of my identity, you sort of have to trust that you've been created perfectly and
Yeah.
you have been created perfectly. And so to surrender to that is powerful because I don't know about you, but there are so many times in my life that I can be driven by my ambition. So I might want to be
Hmm.
a rock star. I might want to be a football player. I might want to be I don't know, like a scientist, or I might want to, be a massive influencer, whatever it is. Well, those are part of your ambitions and they might have something to do with your passion. But when you tap into your identity and you surrender to it, it's kind of like there's a level of trust that you have to take and say, okay, you know what? I think I'm enough. I think everything that I need to be successful is already within me. And what if I just
Yeah.
trusted that, surrendered and trusted, and let's just see how far I can take me.
I love that. Yeah, I've had a guest before kind of call this following your inner compass. And I have loved that because it really does. It's like a little guide that you can tap into, and you'll be able to feel if you're going the right way.
hmm Yeah, your subconscious is constantly talking to you, isn't it?
Yes, it really is. And a term that we've used a lot in this episode, me and you had discussed this a little bit prior to recording on the term mindset and what it really means, because it gets thrown around so much in the self-development space. And I know you know so much about the root of your mindset and kind of where it comes from. So for those of us who do not know, kind of dive into that topic for us.
Yeah, well, it's not just your audience. There's a lot of mindset coaches out there that can't even define mindset itself. So
Yeah.
it's not uncommon because it's such a
Hmm.
ethereal, loose, universal term that's sort of out floating in the ethosphere. But
Oh, yeah.
the most traditional definition of mindset is a conditioned set of beliefs that drive behavior. But the problem with that definition is it doesn't go deep enough. So even if you have beliefs about something, it doesn't mean that your beliefs are correct or helpful or profitable for you. You sort of have to be able to test your belief system. So it took me 7 years, but I created an equation that has been super helpful for me when I'm working with my clients. And so it starts with this. It starts with an experience. So you have an
Mhm.
experience, and you could have been when you were younger or older, because that's when a lot of our beliefs about ourselves are built. So we have an experience that we have thoughts and feelings about. They could be negative, they could be positive. The experience, by the way, you could have initiated or it could have happened to you. It's just an experience. Then you
Mhm.
have thoughts and feelings associated with that experience. And then you have a response. So you have your response to the thoughts, the feelings, and the experiences. So you get to choose how you respond to things. And as you do that better and better all the time, and as you mature, then you actually create a belief. And that's a belief about yourself. So you have your beliefs about yourself come from your experiences, your thoughts, and your feelings, and your responses to things. And if you put all of that together, now you have a mindset.
The way that you broke it down, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza, but it kind of reminded me of his book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. The way that you just stated out in like an equation form, it makes it more like you can digest it a little bit easier. It doesn't make it so broad and so, up to people's feelings, like just the word mindset. It's able to be conceptualized into, I have to have some experience that has feelings and emotions attached to it and go from there.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of therapists and counselors and even mindset coaches they kind of fall short sometimes because
Yeah.
people say as well, you got to change your mindset. Well, okay, well, how do I do that? Well, you got to change your
Hmm.
beliefs. Okay, yeah, well, how do I do that? Well, you have to change your values. Yeah, okay, how do I do that? Well, you have to change your responses to that. Yeah, but how do I do that? And oftentimes we have to go back to an experience that we've had sometime in our past that has shaped us and formed us and had a way bigger impact on us than we could ever have thought or imagined. And oftentimes we don't even know them. They could be subconscious. And so sometimes I'll just say to one of my clients, I'll say, hey, what happened? And they'll be like, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I'm like, well, something happened in your past where you have or formed this belief about yourself. So tell me about an experience when you were growing up that was very formative and it's kind of stuck with you for a long time. It could have been in childhood, it could have been when you were a preteen or a teenager, or even a young adult. So sometimes it's just it's intentionally going back to that experience and saying, well, tell me what happened, and tell me what your thoughts and feelings were about that experience, and tell me about your response. How did you respond in that moment, And tell me about the
Hmm.
beliefs that you formed about yourself. And so when you can pinpoint it in the equation like that, it's pretty powerful because what it allows the client to do is to self-coach. So I might
Yeah.
be guiding or facilitating, but they can self-coach and say, you know what? Yeah, now that you mention it, there is something. And then I'll say something like, well, what would your present self, who's older and wiser, what advice, if you were invisible and you could walk up to yourself in that moment where that experience happened, what advice would you just whisper in your own ear? And it's amazing what people would whisper. Many people are brought to tears, right? Because they're just like, oh, I would tell myself something so different, right? I would just warn them or encourage them or tell them something powerful. And it really makes a big difference. So they can go back into other areas of their life and other experiences and self-coach now that I've given them a little bit of a process and system.
I love that. I love that you're able to give them kind of that self-coaching aspect because I think so many times people who have experiences that maybe enforce like negative or limiting beliefs in their childhood or in their younger years, they see it as this happened to me, and maybe I have these reactions or these beliefs because of this, and oh, I can't do anything about it. When we can go back in and view it from our current self and, try and coach our younger self out of it, like you were saying.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's empowering, right? To give
Yeah.
somebody a tool so that they can use and pick up that tool out of their toolbox whenever they need it.
Yes, exactly. So, what advice would you give for any of our audience listeners who struggle a lot with mental blocks when they're trying to get through this healing process? They tend to just kind of get in their own way.
Well, there are some longer systems or processes that we can take someone through, but if you're going to kind of do it in the moment and you need a quick result, one of the things I like to do is a pattern interrupt. So they're used to responding a certain way to a certain stimuli. But what if we interrupted the pattern and asked them to do something else or a different way to think? So somehow breaking the pattern of what they're used to opens up their creativity and it empowers them to be able to say, oh, maybe I do have some different options here. Maybe there are some different things that I can try. And so I think the pattern interrupt is one of the most powerful sort of in the moment tactics that I would use with my clients. And especially if it's self-defined, like if they can come up with it for themselves. In other words, I'm not going to tell them the pattern interrupt, but I'm just going to invite them to think about different ways or options that they might have. So, for example, I like to say, well, I wonder if there's a hybrid opportunity here. Like, what if we could
Hmm.
combine different things and mix it up into a bowl and we've come up with a different dish? Like, I wonder if we have the same ingredients or similar ingredients. I wonder if we could add an ingredient or two or take out an ingredient or two and come up with a hybrid solution that you haven't thought of before. But you're right there because you've already used a lot of the similar ingredients. But what if we just tweaked it a little bit? And what if you could really pursue or achieve what you want if we just tweaked it a little bit. So in other words, the answer is not so far off. It's just a little bit of tweaking. And I think when people hear that, they're really encouraged that the solution is actually not that far off.
Yeah, exactly. I love that you say it. It gives the reassurance that it's really not that far away because I think stepping into it feels so scary and feels kind of overwhelming and maybe a little bit vulnerable. But once you can assure yourself that this will lead you to the higher version of yourself and that it really is not that far away, it's just how willing you are to surrender, like you were saying.
Yeah, and one of the words that I think that I commonly hear is the word procrastination. So people
Hmm.
procrastinating, making a change or doing something different. And a lot of it is just actually procrastination is resistance, if you really think about it. It's resisting
Yeah.
doing something. And so what if we could eliminate the friction? And it's not about, you got to try harder or you got to add this to your life and do that. But what if we just removed areas of friction? And sometimes the friction comes from a sense of overwhelm. Like, how am I going to do this? Like, could I ever do this? Another
Hmm.
one might come from, I don't know where to start. Like, I don't even know like how I would even begin doing something. But just saying, well, what's just one step that you could take toward this achievement or this goal or this outcome that you're looking for? What if we just sort of broke it down so it wasn't so overwhelming? And where do you think would be a great place to start? And then if as a coach or a counselor, you could say, well, yeah, great place to, think about starting. I wonder if there are other places or another timeline where we can go back a little bit and start a little bit earlier in this process and make it a little easier for you. Because what you're wanting is really ambitious, but what if you could just take a step? And if you can convince people that progress is actually one of the best feelings in the world, then
Hmm.
you actually are quite content with progress and it's really achievable. In other words, there was a study done, and what they were trying to figure out was when does the brain feel like it's doing better? So
Hmm.
what they were doing is they were measuring the I would say, like, if you, let's say you ran a mile, and let's say you, instead of running a mile, you ran a mile and a half and you felt
Hmm.
really good about it because you exceeded your expectations. But what if you ran a mile and 10 yards and only 10 more yards? Like, that's it, or even 10 feet. What they found out was whether it was 10 feet or another half a mile beyond your expectation, the brain still felt like it was making progress and felt great.
Yeah. It's just that, like you were saying, even if it's not that much progress, just being able to know that you did that
Mhm.
is so rewarding and it pushes you to want to keep growing and want to keep going. I think another thing that kind of stems in procrastination is the fear of change. And I believe that you really are not able to continue to grow unless you're willing to change and unless you're willing to go through kind of things that are a little bit uncomfortable. So I love that you were saying that it's just part of the process because I think people, like you're saying, I don't know where to start or I don't know what I should do. And it's like once you start, you'll just know and you'll be able to figure it out.
Yeah, there's a couple different angles to this diamond. Like, one of them might be, people will say, until the pain gets so great that
You
you
feel like
won't
you have
change.
to.
Yeah, yeah. And then there are other people that will talk about pleasure and how great something is in front of you, and if you could just achieve it. I think there are different ways to think about this, but ultimately, I think the brain really does want to succeed, and
Hmm.
and there are different moments where it requires a certain amount of fuel to change. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know about you, but sometimes I feel like I have to sort of build myself up. It's like kind of get in
Hmm.
shape to get in shape, right? Like, if
Yeah.
you just go cold turkey, it's so hard. But if you get in shape to get in shape, it's a lot easier. And so
Hmm.
my wife and I, we had done some hikes here in the Seattle area recently, and she was going up this one hill in the mountains, and she was just like, I don't think I can do it. Like, this is just, it's a little bit more challenging for me. And so, but for me, that particular hill was quite easy, but for her it was difficult. But then I
Hmm.
went with my oldest son, who's 25, and he ran track and he's in great shape. And we went up this incredibly challenging hill. And he was the one like a bunny rabbit up the hill. He wasn't even breathing hard. And I was just
Hmm.
easing, just really struggling.
Hmm.
And so the mountains that we have to climb are all different. And to be able to give each other space to be able to go at the pace that that will help that person go up that hill in a way that serves them well, and then that's great. But I think sometimes we get impatient, and we get so impatient that we don't get in shape to get in shape, and we just jump cold turkey into something. Sometimes just working your way into something can be really valuable, and that's why I talk about like learn to love and appreciate progress, because
Yeah.
nothing feels as good as progress. And if you keep progressing, you'll get to amazing heights. You just sort of have to be consistent and
Hmm.
be willing to make little steps of progress.
Yeah, and I love that you focus so much on the progress because I feel like if your focus is on the progress, and even if you're making these little steps towards your goal, your focus gets less on your goal and you're not so worried about the outcome and the what ifs because you're worried about where you are right now. And I feel like that's such a key point in mindset is being able to be present and not worrying about the before or the after.
It's really true. Like if you think of the word presence, like your presence is in a room, you think about it, to be present is to be where your feet are. It's to be where
Yeah.
you are, right? I
Hmm.
remember I remember I was going to the gym, and I was kind of backtracking a little bit about the progress piece, but I was at the gym, I was on the elliptical, and I couldn't go 10 minutes without stopping 3 times. It was really hard. It was hard. And I was only on level
Hmm.
like 2 or 3 or something like that. It was embarrassing. But then after a week, I only had to stop twice. And then after another week, I only had to stop once. And then after another week, I didn't stop at all. I could do all 10 minutes all at the same time. But
Yeah.
it took me 2 or 3 or 4 times just to keep working, a week to keep doing it. So
Hmm.
then I was able to do, so I thought, well, if I did 10 minutes, maybe I could do 11. And this is a true story, by the way. So I went
Hmm.
11 minutes, and then I went 12 minutes. I thought, well, if I do 12 minutes, surely I could do 15 minutes. But I thought, no, I'm just going to experiment. I'm just going to do like one more minute. So then
Hmm.
13 minutes, 14 minutes, 15, and then I got to 20 minutes without stopping. And
Wow.
then I would raise the the difficulty level. So I was doing level 5 for 20 minutes, and then I would do level 6 for 20 minutes. And I'm just kind of
Hmm.
just that slow progress. And then I did 21 minutes, and then 22 minutes, and then 20. I made it all the way up to 59 minutes.
Wow.
59 minutes without stopping, doing nasal breathing the entire time, going as
Hmm.
hard as anybody in the entire gym. No one could outrow me. And I
Hmm.
just, people would look at that and kind of go, oh, you're so amazing. Well, not really. It was just another minute every day. It was just another minute.
Yeah.
So it was so simple and so easy. It didn't feel like an accomplishment or an achievement. But I think
Hmm.
back over it, I'm like, yeah, that was pretty cool. I really enjoyed that. Just the idea of making a little bit more progress every day.
Yes, I love that. I also have had experiences like that in the gym where I've just pushed myself a little more until I achieved my goal. And I love that you were able to share your own experience with it. And with that, I challenge all of our listeners today to try and take a step this week and a little goal that you want to try and get by. And just take a little step, another minute every single day until you're able to get there. And don't focus so much on how fast you get there, but more on that you're making a little step every day.
Yeah, I love that. And one last piece to the mindset equation that I didn't mention earlier, which
Yes.
once you have that new mindset, so you go through
Hmm.
the experience, thoughts, feelings, my response, the belief I have about myself that creates the mindset, but it doesn't end there. So a new mindset always requires new and improved behaviors.
Yeah.
So now that I have a new mindset, what am I going to do with it? In other words, like what's the action step, as you just mentioned to your listeners? Like, what is the
Hmm.
action step I'm going to take with this new mindset? Because when you play it out in real life, when you think about it, that new and improved behavior is actually like a new experience that you're providing for yourself. And now you
Yeah.
have a new experience that you just with that new mindset, and now you've attached it and you've created this cycle. Well, now with a new and improved experience, you can have new and improved thoughts and feelings with new and improved responses, with new and improved beliefs about yourself, with a new and improved mindset that results in new and improved actions or behaviors. That's kind of like a new experience. So this is how you build a mindset.
Yes. And I love that you say new and improved because it's better, but it's still based off of just who you are. Every single step of your growth, you don't change into a whole new person, but you're able to be that better version of yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a lot more simple than people think it is. I think the idea of the
Exactly.
mindset sounds kind of daunting, but
Mhm.
it really isn't.
It isn't. Thank you so much for breaking it down with us today, Gary, and just giving us all the insight into your teachings as well. I will have everything for Gary listed in the description wherever you're listening to the episode so that you guys can go and check out his work. It's amazing. Like you heard a little bit about it today and kind of what he focuses on in his teachings. So thank you so much, Gary, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. And I will see you guys next week.